Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of The Fall Guy, the 2024 film starring Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, an adaptation of the 1980s Lee Majors TV series, and a celebration of stunt workers in this industry. And as such, there are so many inside jokes and movie references in this movie. And as someone who spent the last 14 years of my life working in this industry, I just noticed all these cool little details, so I had to break down this movie for you. Let's go through this scene by scene for everything you might have missed. The opening seconds of this movie in the opening credits introduce the cast and crew on these film script pages that are watermarked with stunts. So we're not really seeing a film as much as we are just being taken through the life of a stunt coordinator or stunt performer. The director of this movie, David Leitch, began his career as a stunt double for Brad Pitt in the 90s and early 2000s. But then in 2014, he produced and co-directed with Chad Stahelski the first John Wick film. And from there, David Leitch paved a new path for stuntmen turned directors. He directed Atomic Blonde and Deadpool 2, Hobbs & Shaw, Bullet Train, and now this film. And there are all kinds of jokes in these opening titles, like there's a call sheet where at the top you'll see written in, all calls pushed 1/2 hour. And if you look at the bottom of the call sheet, Colt and Jody are at the top of it. And that would not be the case in real life. You always have whoever the biggest star is. It's actually a contractual thing. It would have been Tom Ryder, but the fact that they're listed here tells us that this call sheet is for the real heroes of this story, Colt and Jody. And the call was probably pushed up so that they could hook up. Youngblood's cover of Kisses, I Was Made for Loving You plays over this opening montage that's narrated by Colt Seavers, Ryan Gosling, who says that stuntmen are in every movie, but their faces are never seen. Now, Colt Seavers was the name of Lee Majors' character in the Fall Guy TV series that aired from 1981 to 1986, and it followed Colt as a Hollywood stuntman who moonlights as a bounty hunter. And among the stunts that we see in this montage are this guy jumping from a train with a truck smashed into it onto this speeding car. This shot is actually from 2011's Fast 5 from the Fast and Furious saga. That, of course, was a film released by Universal, which also distributes this film. And it's just kind of ironic, not just for all the recent reports of the drama on every Dwayne Johnson set, and also past reports of Johnson and Vin Diesel's odd macho diva feud, but also the way tragically Paul Walker lost his life in a car accident, and also the way they used VFX to complete Paul Walker's scenes for Furious 7, which I remember at the time in 2015 was pretty touching, and I think we all were like, that's fine. But when we look back on it, isn't it kind of weird that that's the way Hollywood works? We see the movie set where Colt met Jody Moreno, Emily Blunt. Now, a different Jody was the name of Colt's co-star in the 1980s series, but here the character was originally written to be a makeup artist, but the part was rewritten so that she'd be a camera operator turned first-time director. And how she was able to make this jump, we find out at the end of the movie, was really just part of Gail Meyer's plan to have a director that she could easily manipulate. Gosling said that he took inspiration from David Leitch and his producer wife Kelly McCormick as kind of like a husband and wife working in stunts on a movie set. But this war scene on whatever movie this is reminds me of the beach invasion that Emily Blunt actually had to shoot with Tom Cruise in the movie Edge of Tomorrow. David Leitch pulls off a nearly 4-minute oneer. It never cuts in this shot that follows Ryan Gosling from the trailer with Emily Blunt, then through the set as he meets Tom and Gail, and then Colt flirts with Jody over the radio, then up the elevator, all the way to his big fall, his accident on the Descender. But along the way, he passes this movie stunt coordinator that's played as a cameo by David Leitch himself, and he says, guess we're going again, which is something that he would say as a director on set, and probably heard plenty of times as a stunt coordinator. Aaron Taylor Johnson plays Tom Ryder, the movie star whose name is clearly a play on Tom Cruise, though later Colt asks the VFX person, if you have a chance, could you turn me into Tom Cruise? Meaning that Tom Cruise exists in this film universe, and clearly they didn't want to offend Tom Cruise that much. Aaron Taylor Johnson appeared in David Leitch's previous film, Bullet Train. Hannah Waddingham from Ted Lasso plays Tom's producer, Gail Meyer. Now, since this movie brings up Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson by name, I think it's okay to point out the fact that his business manager is his ex-wife, Danny Garcia. And in 2019, the Wall Street Journal reported that on the Fate of the Furious, Garcia would have to go through scripts and through the dailies of every day and count how many hits Dwayne Johnson took in fight scenes so that he can negotiate with his co-stars Vin Diesel and Jason Statham how many hits each of them would take, and to make sure it was all like fair and balanced. Yeah, so you know, people like this do exist on movie sets, and in other instances, Hollywood has totally covered up crimes. This movie isn't that much of an exaggeration. Now, Tom tells Colt to do it backwards, less face, which we later learn is really a trick so that Colt wouldn't be able to see where he was falling. So 8 months later, Colt, recovering from his injury, is working as a valet driver at this Mexican restaurant El Cacatina del Capitan, which they shot at the real-life LA staple El Coyote Mexican Cafe with the iconic red overhangs. Quentin Tarantino showcased this restaurant in 2019's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, as it was the Mexican restaurant that Sharon Tate and her friends ate at in August 1969, the night they were murdered by the Manson family. And that film also celebrates the stuntman as the true superhero of Hollywood. Gail calls offering Colt a job on Metal Storm, a movie that's being directed by Jody down in Sydney. Now, Metal Storm Storm: The Destruction of Jared's Sin was an actual 1983 movie released by Universal in 3D. It was a space-age western, one of the many late 70s, early 80s low-budget sci-fis that every studio was making, trying to have their own version of Star Wars. So in this fictional world, the studio is rebooting Metal Storm as like a modern sci-fi epic akin to Dune, or Mad Max, Fury Road, or Rebel Moon. Colt has to valet the car of an old co-worker, and he does the prayer hands pose right after he told Gale that Tom had only sent him a prayer hands emoji after his accident. But he spins out this guy's car, and we were reminded of Gosling's role as a getaway driver in the movie Drive in 2011, another movie where he worked as a Hollywood stunt driver. Over AC/DC's Thunderstruck, I love how the opening titles put the cast and crew's names in script formatting from actual scripted movie pages in this film. On the flight, Colt reads an Australian magazine with Tom Ryder on the cover, where he's quoted as saying, "I do all my own stunts." And I like how on the beach behind him is a kangaroo, randomly. Immediately, Colt's likeness is scanned when he gets there. So this is something that actors have to go through for VFX purposes when they have to like rotoscope their face onto CGI doubles or other stunt doubles. But Colt is right to point out that this is really weird for a stunt guy to have to go through, because there's never a reason they would need a stuntman's face. And we find out that's part of the conspiracy later on. So when we go to the beach set where they're going to do the cannon rolls, David Leitch uses yet another long take, another oneer. This one goes for 2 minutes that shows Jody having to deal with the various departments of production, from props who built 200 baton guns that look like guitars, to special effects where the pyrotechnic charges detonate too early, which is setting up for the fun twist in the post-credit scene, to the screenwriter who pitches fixing the third act problems by having the characters acknowledge that there are third act problems, which would be really fun to do in a super serious sci-fi western space epic. Now, normally in screenwriting, a good version of this maneuver is called hanging a lantern, where you just acknowledge to the viewers that this like subtle break in logic is just recognized by the screenwriter, and you make up for it in other ways. But you would never do it when it would be this brazen. In this case, it would just be called bad writing. I love the shot of Colt running the sand through his fingers, which totally feels like a reference to Bill Paxton's scene in Twister, where he drops the dirt from his hand to see how the wind catches it, just to sense a tornado is coming, and he's like, "We're going green." Here, Colt is measuring the density of the sand to know its traction, which is actually smart. He knows when it's a king tide or when it's like high tide or low tide to know how wet the sand would be and how well the car would drive on it. Stunt coordinator Dan, played by Winston Duke, says, "This is one of those times whether it's an inch or a mile, a win is a win," which Colt recognizes is a quote from The Fast and the Furious. It's just so fun in this movie. A lot of these guys who made this movie worked on these types of films. But in this case, the stunt is called a cannon roll, which is when a cannon-like apparatus is fitted beneath the car that shoots downward and flips the car sideways into a series of rolls. This movie, The Fall Guy, actually set a Guinness World Record for the most cannon rolls in a single stunt in a film, 8.5 rolls. And Gale calls us out later saying it's a freaking world record, and she's not lying. The previous record was 7 by Adam Curley in 2006's Casino Royale. Okay, on to the battle scene. We actually see like a finished version of it. It's super yellow toned with spaceships hovering in the background. Yeah, that female vocalist is a nod to Laurie Kotler's iconic singing in Dune and Dune Part 2. We hear this vocalization anytime this movie shows Metal Storm battle footage. In this scene, Jody uses her direction to bully Colt for the way he ended their relationship, and she makes him do several takes where he's lit on fire and has to smack into this boulder. David Leitch said that the idea for the scene came from a scene in Grosse Pointe Blank when John Cusack gets berated over the radio. Jody wears this pink jumpsuit, and Emily Blunt has said in various interviews that there is a similarity between this character and Greta Gerwig, who wore a similar pink jumpsuit while shooting the heist sequence in last year's big hit Barbie, which of course also featured Ryan Gosling. Now, in Vanity Fair's Notes on a Scene video, Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt, and David Leitch break down this particular scene, and they note the first AD Adam's hilarious little run to bring the loudspeaker over to Colt. Blunt actually called this a first AD run because it's the run of the crew member who has never taken a bathroom break, and they pointed out that he has sunglasses on the back of his head, and in his back pocket is a smaller leather-bound copy of the screenplay, because first ADs can't fumble with like a huge full-size A1 printed page. It has to be like a tiny little version of it that they can like fit in their pocket. We see this hilarious extra in the alien suit that just keeps nodding along to Colt and then finally has to weigh in.
I had a similar situation when I fell in love with my wife's sister.
And then we get the shot where Jody is reflected in Colt's aviator sunglasses to show that she is on his mind. I assume this must have been VFX because we don't really see Leitch's camera ever reflected in the lenses. Most of the time, if you ever see like reflective sunglasses in a movie shot, they always have to like swap it out with VFX in subtle ways. In Gale's trailer are posters for Tom Ryder's past movies, Bad Cop, Good Dog, The Puncher, Action Packs, where he looks like he's posed like Tom Cruise in the White Beater and the Jack Reacher marketing. Then Annihilation of Valor, which features the character with like a star on his mask. And later when Jodie's going through the wardrobe shop, it looks like there was like a Captain America type suit with a big star on the chest. Another movie called Failed Case, another one called Hot Earth. And it kind of reminds me of Tropic Thunder, where Ben Stiller's character was just in all these other bogus movies. Gail asks Colt what the message of all of her movies is, and he just kind of guesses nihilism is a viable worldview. And I love this line because that basically is the message of all the DC movies we've seen in the past 15 years. And I'm not just saying Zack Snyder, Christopher Nolan did this, as well as Todd Phillips and Joker. Really, I think it's like the unintended consequence of Nolan and Heath Ledger's excellent take on the Joker. And it's just Hollywood became obsessed with that idea and made it the model for all of their movies after that. Like after every movie executive saw The Dark Knight, they're like, everything has to be gritty and dark and gloomy and moody. And I think we just forgot that like movies can make us feel happy. That's okay. And I know that this movie's screenwriter Drew Pearce had Christopher Nolan on his mind in this particular scene because Gail hands Colt one of Tom's post-it notes, which she says Tom is still doing Memento level, referencing Christopher Nolan's 2000 film Memento, where Guy Pearce plays a guy with a memory condition who has to leave notes to himself just like this. But I also think that this method of communicating via post-it note may have come from Wesley Snipes, who reportedly would only communicate with director David S. Goyer on the set of Blade Trinity by passing around post-it notes like this. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. It's spring, and while for a lot of us that means doing a deep cleaning of our apartment, there's no reason you can't do the same thing with your brain. Whether you're looking to begin or continue your journey with mental health, BetterHelp can help you connect to a therapist who's right for you. BetterHelp makes starting therapy easier and less intimidating for a lot of people. First, use our link to go to their site, BetterHelp.com/newrockstars. The site will ask you to answer a few questions so BetterHelp can match you up with one of their over 30,000 therapists who they think will help you out the most. The therapist they pick for you will have tons of experience dealing with whatever you're going through. Every single one of their therapists is licensed, has a master's or doctorate degree, and has spent over 3 years and 1,000 hours working with people just like you. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours so you can get started fast. We've been promoting BetterHelp for a while, and we've heard some amazing feedback from you guys. We got permission to share this review from one of our viewers who said, I used to be against the idea of therapy and I didn't need it. After one session with my therapist, I completely pivoted and realized how beneficial therapy truly is. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your home. Visit BetterHelp.com/newrockstars or choose New Rockstars during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. Colt gets in one of the trucks where Taylor Swift's All Too Well plays, and even after he and Jodie talk for quite a long scene, when he turns the radio back on, the same song is still playing. And I think it's because this song is 11 minutes long. Actually, in 2021, I did a Twitter thread breaking down this song's history with Jake Gyllenhaal, with Spider-Man movies, and with Tobey Maguire's stunt injury on the movie Seabiscuit. So in a way, this song is tangentially about stunt mishaps. Colt goes to Tom's residence, passing his yacht, where we later learn Tom actually is the whole time. Among the random post-it notes in Tom's place by the security screen is one that reads Pirate Download Bullet Train, which again is the previous film from David Leitch and Aaron Taylor Johnson where they work together. There's also a post-it note right by it that says send something to Leitch. Tom has shelves of props from his past movies, his boxing gloves from Puncher, the prop gun from Action Packs where Colt sees the clip is full of blanks. So it is kind of like a Chekhov's prop gun in the structure of this movie. Tom's girlfriend and co-star Iggy Starr, Teresa Palmer, attacks with a prop sword. And there's a solid joke here where Colt says, I'm in Metal Storm 2. And Iggy says, there is no Metal Storm 2 yet, thinking it's like the sequel Metal Storm as opposed to I'm also in Metal Storm. And I love how she says yet, which she's got to assume because it's Tom Ryder, it's going to get greenlit for a sequel. Australian actor Matus plays Dune, Tom's dealer. And with Metal Storm's parallels to Mad Max Fury Road, these kind of stunt movies that are shot in Australia, this actor plays Fang in Furiosa. Also, his name is Dune. Dune asks Colt if they give Oscars for stunt work, and Colt says no, but then they cheers to the true heroes. It is true, they do not currently give Oscars for stunt performance, but this movie is leading a campaign to add stunt performance as a category alongside Oscars for visual effects and costume and makeup. They actually incorporated stunts on the red carpet at their premiere, and Ryan Gosling and David Leitch showed up at the Waterworld stunt show at Universal Studios, where Gosling confirmed that that's where the character of Cole Sieverts got his start, working at Universal Studios. They've just done some really clever marketing for this movie, and I think it's a lot of of fun. And I hope they're successful. Stunt performers totally deserve to have their own Oscar category. Colt realizes his drink is drugged and he starts beating the shit out of Dune's goons with champagne bottles, which emit these hallucinatory sparkles. Colt chases Dune in the street, bracing against a bus station ad for Tom Ryder's Stone cologne. Dune's taxi hits him and Dune says that the drugs will wear off when he stops seeing unicorns. And Colt looks over to see a unicorn. This unicorn is awesome. It reappears in the next few sequences. Ryan Gosling was in Blade Runner 2049, a movie that embraced the idea that Deckard from the original film was a replicant. And if you remember that 1982 film, at least Ridley Scott's director's cut, it includes a mysterious dream shot of a unicorn running through a forest, which recontextualizes a little origami unicorn that Deckard finds in the final scene. And many people saw that as evidence that he was an android. So I see this unicorn in this movie as a little meta Ryan Gosling reference to his work on Blade Runner 2049, and as a little clue that in this movie, Colt is being manipulated. He's kind of on his own detective quest, but doesn't realize that he is really the mark of this conspiracy. Hotel concierge Kevin gives Colt a key to Tom's suite, but notice how both key cards end up not working, so he has to break into it. And I wonder if this might have been actually to keep Colt in the hotel corridor longer in order to set up the camera angle that they would use to frame him later. Jodie calls asking if she should use a split screen in the third act, which David Leitch shoots as a split screen between Jodie and Colt. And we get this cute scene between them where we see that they can only communicate through like movie making shop talk, which is just the case when you're in LA. Like everyone just speaks the language of filmmaking. But this call ends as Jodie gets a better idea, and we see that she's running her finger over the storyboard previs of the Metal Storm Thelma and Louise shot when it's making the big jump that foreshadows the way they will end up tricking Tom Ryder in the final act of this movie. So in a way, it's kind of like David Leitch and Drew Pearce being like, oh, that's how we're gonna end the third act of our movie. Colt finds Tom's previous stunt guy dead on ice in the tub, but he assumes that it must have just been the hallucinogens. So Colt connects with Tom's personal assistant, Alma, played by Stephanie Sue from Everything Everywhere All at Once. And we meet his dogs, including his Australian Kelpie, Jean-Claude, who's trained in French. And he's my favorite part of this movie. He's obviously named after Jean-Claude Van Damme, action star, Belgian martial artist from Bloodsport, and yes, a star who spoke French along with Belgian and English. Gosling said that his partner Ava Mendes used to have a dog named Hugo who only spoke French, but the dog passed away. It's very sad. So he kind of said that this dog was a tribute to their dog. Alma recovered Tom's phone, but she gets kidnapped by Tom's brutish security guys led by Man Bun. Colt chases them down with Jean-Claude, and Jean-Claude is such a good pup. He's always waiting for Colt, and he's always so obedient. But I love how this dog keeps barking until Colt buckles it in, because even the dog in this movie is all about safety. Colt slides behind this truck as its carrier scrapes along the bridge and along the road. I love this sequence. At one point, the whole thing rolls to the side and he and Man Bun just fight inside as the thing just rotates around. It actually reminds me of the way the heavy vault safe is dragged behind the cars in the Fast 5 movie and smashes through the city. Colt joins up with Dan to search through Tom's post-it notes for his phone password. Dan reads one. It says, "Is it Momoa or Mamoa?" setting up the cameo of Jason Momoa at the end of this movie. There's other fun ones. I mean, all the ones, if you read them, are just super fun. One says, "Does magic happen?" And then there's another one that says, "Remind crew, no eye contact," which is sadly a thing a lot of like movie and TV stars are like, don't let people look at me. They learn from Tom's phone video that Tom killed his stunt double, Henry, and Colt is being framed for it on the news. They prepare for the bad guys to arrive. Colt begins to move furniture around, setting the room to give himself some pads to fall on later. But I read this as a reference to the Jennifer Lopez movie Enough, when she prepares to lure in her abuser by carefully positioning her living room furniture around. And then Dan, as he fights the female goon, shouts, "Jason Bourne!" And then he lifts her over his shoulders and throws her, shouting, "Dwayne The Rock Johnson!" Meanwhile, Man Bun shoots the phone, and Colt pushes Dan in slow motion, and we hear this sound effect, and it's from The $6 Million Man. That series starred 80s Fall Guys star Lee Majors. Man Bun swipes the prop gun from Colt and fires it at him, but Colt smartly plays dead. He drops. Colt leaps off the balcony onto the yacht, and of course, Tom Ryder is there waiting for him with everyone else who's part of this conspiracy. Tom and his goons prepare to burn Colt alive, while Gail lies to Jodie in the screening room. And I love how throughout this movie, we always see her freebasing Diet Coke, but it's always from cans and covered drinks. But in this scene, the cup has no lid. You would never walk around with a full cup of Diet Coke with no lid on it, but it's clearly just so she can inevitably force Jodie's phone into the soda. Tom confesses that he was the one who sabotaged Colt's descender to cause the accident just to get a cool shot. And Colt snaps, "Tom, you need carbs! Your brain runs on glucose! For basic cognitive function, you need them!" And I feel like Colt has been waiting to scream that at the star since going through his refrigerator at his residence. Yes, if you don't consume carbs just to like look shredded in your movies, it makes you crazy. As the goons dump gas on him, Colt screams, "Help!" But it's really just to get his mouth open so that he can get some gas in his mouth to spit at Man Bun and catch him on fire. But I feel like he'd be close enough with all the fumes, he would catch on fire too. But he has no problem being caught on fire. Colt's Miami Vice jacket now is perfect in this context, as we are now in a boat chase through Sydney Harbor, which we would often see in the Miami Vice show. Colt crashes the boat to fake his death, and I like how there's a shot of Colt swimming from underwater, which I feel like is a nod to Jason Bourne when he escapes at the end of the Bourne Identity by faking his death this way. And then it also gets called back in the final shot of the Bourne Ultimatum, the third movie. You remember the music? Dun, 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 dun. Colt uses the same alien costume as the one worn by the extra who fell in love with his wife's sister to sneak into Jody's trailer, and they plot to force a confession out of Tom by completing the Metal Storm car jump money shot. Now, this is the most amount of time we spend with Aaron Taylor Johnson in this movie, and whether or not the cameras are rolling, I love that he stays in character with this insane accent that I'm pretty sure is Aaron Taylor Johnson's impression of Matthew McConaughey. Even if we lose! After screwing Colt over this whole movie by deep faking him, tricking him into doing cannon rolls, by doing take after take of him being caught on fire and slamming into a boulder, by forcing him to sign timesheets and ignore meal penalties, it's so satisfying to see this Metal Storm crew use their skills to instead restore Colt's reputation and save his ass. Colt makes Tom think he's gonna do the Thelma and Louise jump, but it's just to get Tom panicked enough to confess the murder and the cover-up. And the best part is, he is wearing his own wire because he's an actor, and of course he's mic'd up. Gale tries to steal the footage and escape in a helicopter, but the crew does what film crews do best. They just adjust in real time with the tools they got. They clip a D-ring onto a goon to drag him away. Man Bun gets zipped away the way Tom had before. Jean-Claude does what he does best and bites a crotch. Jody uses one of the awkward guitar guns that she hated before now to choke a guy and beat two other guys. And Colt jumps on the jib, which swings around so that he can jump on the helicopter. You can tell that David Leitch and his stunt crew just kind of looked around a movie set, the type of sets that they've been working on for years, and started to think, what if this stuff that we used to get these shots could actually be weaponized and turned into a set piece that we put in the frame? So Colt is able to get his hands on the footage evidence, and since he's been keeping track of Gale's shots from her revolver, he knows when she is empty, and he cycles back to his fall, flipping them off with two fingers, just like he did in the opening accident. But now he has regained his confidence because he trusts his crew, and they catch him. So he has gone from the fall guy who takes the hits on a movie set, who fell and could not get back up, to the fall guy for the crimes of other people, now to a fall guy who has just rediscovered the power of his falls. We cut to the finished product of Metal Storm. We see Tom Ryder has been recast with Jason Momoa himself, and we see all of Colt's great shots, including the cannon roll on the beach and the Thelma and Louise jump as a moon explodes behind the car. And we see that this is a trailer being shown at Comic-Con's Hall H. The movie ends revealing Tom and Jody have gone in together for Fall Guys Stunts, their own kind of stunt production company. And there's a post-credit scene explaining why Tom Ryder had to be recast. Lee Majors and Heather Thomas from the 80s Fall Guy TV series make cameos here as the police officers to arrest Tom and Gale. And right next to them is the 1981 K2500 Wideside, the muscle car from the original series. Tom strays into a pyrotechnic field, ignoring the signs, probably because they're not on post-its, and he blows himself to smithereens, forcing Alma to call to see if Jason Momoa is available. I had a lot of fun in this movie, and I can't recommend it enough because I think it's like the perfect summer movie. Comment down below with what you love the most about this film. Follow me at Erik Voss. Subscribe to all 3 channels in the New Rockstars network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.